Let's continue on with lesson 1.5. We're going to start with the problem situation here. And so I'm going to have you go ahead and read that. Take a minute to read that. Kind of the setup of the problem and what's involving credit cards and debt and data, and how much the average American consumers have in terms of credit and debt. And so let's go ahead and start looking at the situation. Now that you've read it. The first question is asking, what is the average number of credit cards per person? Well, in the story, there were 6 million credit cards. Consumers have 6 million credit cards. And we know there are 3 million people in the United States, so that on average would be 2 credit cards per person. What is the average number of credit cards per household? So there were 600 credit cards, and there were 100 million households, where it says right there. And so we take the total, divide by how many households there are, and you get 6 credit cards per household. Now, these are just averages. These are what we call statistics. So that doesn't mean every household has that many. This is on average what we would expect per household. In the US, the average number of credit cards is actually 3.7. Why is this answer different than the average number of credit cards per person? It's because all people don't have credit cards. We're just looking at, again, people who have credit cards. It's 3.7. This was 2. This is divided by the total 3 million people. But in our country, 3 million people do not all have credit cards. So that's why the value is a little different there. And then on these other ones here, consider the statement average credit card debt per household was $15,863. Does every household with a credit card have this much debt? Of course not. Some lower, some higher. This is just an average value. In general, that's how many would, in average, what we would expect. Most people are around 15,000, right? And so you can take a look at that. So make sure you think about this idea again that the average is not what everyone has. It's just kind of where the middle is of all the debt. Some people would be above and some people would be below. And then this activity here is a good one to go through. It really kind of tests a good exercise. So you can see the answers here to each of these. So you have different groups of data, but notice the pattern is that they all have a mean of 500, but then their medians are different because the data is different. And so again, just because the means are the same doesn't mean data looks the same. And so that's an interesting kind of discovery here as you look at that. Find the median. The median again is going to be the middle value between all of these. And so here it's 485. In between here is 140. What's between 500 and 500? 500. So you have the median there, and then the mode is the one that comes up the most. So again, just interesting set of data there. And there's some answers to some questions here. So again, make sure you can calculate those values there, and you know where this comes from, these 140, the median, okay? And then if you want an exercise, try to create your own data set. There's an infinite amount of answers here that match up with the mean of 500, and then see what happens with your other answers. That would be an interesting task for you to accomplish. Here are the answers to these questions here. You can take a look. Really thinking about which measure of center, because it's a measure which one's better. And I would say the 485 in this case is kind of close to all these values. The 500 is all the same, so that doesn't matter. See, these numbers are scattered out more, so the median and average are not really good representatives of the data. And so that's something to keep in mind. And so then there's the answers to those questions here. And then this idea of recall that college students' credit cards carry a mean balance of 500 while having a median balance of 136. What does this indicate about the distribution? That's an important word, kind of like how the numbers are spread out. These are distributed widely. These are all the same. These are close also. And so thinking about that, there's an answer again to that question if you think about it. And then looking at this last piece here, the survey, here's an example of data that would match this. And again, there's an infinite amount of answers to this. The key is that we want 47 to be the median value, and then you want to build around that. So if the average is 611, then if there's 5 students, their total debt is 3,055. So all you have to do is make sure your 5 numbers add up to 3,055.